Hey, you guys remember when the main cartoon channels used to air movies? And no, I don't mean like Cartoon Network airing like Shark Boy and Lava Girl or something. I mean when these networks went out of the way to make TV movies of their shows. This was especially seen in the mid-2000s era, where it genuinely feels like nearly every cartoon was given a movie for some reason. At Nick, you got like Jimmy Neutron having Win, Lose, Kaboom, and Danny Phantom with Rainstorm, and some surprising ones like My Life as a Teenage Robot getting Escape from Cluster Prime, and even Chalk Zone of all shows got a movie too, which I covered in detail in my dedicated Chalk Zone retrospective. Check it out for more info. Disney had a handful too, like the Proud Family movie, the Recess movie, Leroy and Stitch. Hell, if you're Fairly Odd Parents or Kim Possible, you get two. And Cartoon Network was definitely no slouch on that account either, as we got a bunch of movies off their shows. Ed and Eddie's Big Picture Show, Good Will Hunting, Big Boogie Adventure, Teen Titans Trouble in Tokyo, My Go Ben 10 Secret of the Omnitrix, and whatever the hell Race Against Time was. Now, these movies are usually well loved in their respective fandoms, and they would each call them the best movie the network put out. But I want to shine on a particular CNTV movie. Codename Kids Next Door, Operation Zero. I'm sure many people my age remember that as well as the show. The big, world-ending movie that threatened the entire candy world, and really dark and gritty for what's usually a very lighthearted tone show, with dreary and unsettling atmosphere for most of it. And a lot of people have wanted me to check it out in my K&D videos, and I've even got on record saying that I avoided covering most of the movie's plots and reveals until I could dedicate an entire video on the movie. And, well, I'm finally gonna cover it. An entire in-depth review and analysis. I want to tackle this massive special in its scale, atmosphere, reveals, and all the themes it brought, and how it elevates the Candy franchise, and makes potentially the best piece of media from this show. And maybe take a look if it can actually be considered the best of the CN original TV movies. So without further ado, let's jump to Codename Kids Next Door's first and only movie, Operation Zero. Well, I would say that, but I have some stuff before. This movie didn't just come out of nowhere in universe. It was actually foreshadowed a bit in the actual show. Now, it should be known that serialization wasn't nearly as common as it is nowadays, and it was actively frowned upon by networks. Avatar was the biggest example of a heavily serialized original show in the era, and even then the network hated it because of it. The only other shows from that era that did have serialized elements were largely based off comic adaptations, which already had serialized structure and adapted stories from them, and also somewhat of others more inspired by comics like Teen Titans and Ben 10, which had lighter but still occasionally serialized elements through the respective seasons, but for the most part were still openly episodic. However, Candy was a bit distinct in that it did have some serialized elements in the series. Not as big as those other shows, but did use it to establish some stuff that would become more important in a later episode, such as the code module and Tommy becoming a K&D member in season 3 to build out the finale to that season, and some status quo changes like having Chad affected the teenagers, though later on in the series it would get so much stronger serialized elements, such as the Splinter Cell. But this movie aired early in season 6, and the episode before, Operation England, actually had some solid build up to the event, and I'll go through it briefly. It starts out with number 1 and his goofy dad going on a trip to England, their home country, and where Nigel was born. But Nigel meets up with a kid who needs help returning the sealed book to the Grand Library and making sure no one else takes it. But soon after, he gets confronted by multiple other unruly kids with weird tech and powers, including what I think might be a Doctor Who reference, who are all after the book and chase him down for getting help from another group of kids he thinks are Sector E, the English branch of the K&D. Eventually, he manages to find the library with help from the others, but gets confronted by the other kids, who take the book, explaining they believe it is the legendary Book of K&D, which holds all the organization's secrets since its conception, and all the stories of the members before they were decommissioned, and could potentially destroy it if it got in the wrong hands.
The same one discovered by number 0, himself.
But it turns out that they were actually Sector E this whole time trying to get the book back, and he accidentally teamed up with the delightful children counterparts. Weird. I kind of figured they should know each other with Nigel's reputation, and they should have researched the local K&D branch when he was in the area. But it doesn't matter, as the book was a red herring, and it's actually just the kid's Rainbow Monkey book he desperately needed to return before he got late fees. And then they all just go out for a pint at the local pub. Love this joke, though.
To fight? Fight? Over a Rainbow Monkey book? What do you think we are? Americans?
And yeah, it's an enjoyable episode, new locations, some cool action sequences, and a good twist with obviously the new interesting build-up to the movie that would air the next week. If only most of the jokes weren't based solely around British people talk weird.
Run, down the apples and pears and fruit, baggage and freight. So we thought we'd help, eh? Excuse me?
This horse panel is so a skit wearing me around the houses!
That's not me bonnet, that's me trouble syrup! I have no idea what I just said.
Which honestly was kind of a thing for seeing around this time.
Bangers and mash, bubble and squeak, toad in the hole. Don't British people speak English?
Well, okay, I do freaking love this joke.
Wish I had some of my 2x4 technology right now.
Ugh. Anything else in your pocket, sir?
But yeah, this primarily does set up the very next episode to fans of the show, the massive movie Operation Zero. It starts out really atmospheric, narrated by number 1 and giving some pivotal lore, telling a long time ago when the world was once ruled by one evil adult, Grandfather, and enslaves multiple children to create tapioca for him in smog-filled factories all over the city. The fact that it clearly takes place in London is a clear callback to the Victorian era of child labor, which I'll get more to later. But yeah, even though in my previous videos I went over how this type of child exploitation in the show isn't rare, this one is not done with a taste of irony or exaggeration. It's just genuinely weary and oppressive, which sets the mood right away. But things change when we see 2 kids escape the factory. It's actually explained to be Grandfather's children, Monty and Ben. Ben is terrified of his father's wrath and is characterized as very cowardly, indicated by being traumatized by his father, but Monty is much more resilient and rebellious, wanting to find a way to stop the oppression. But his prayers get answered when the Soul Tree in the era they were in reveals a secret passageway to a room with mysterious technology, and more importantly, the Book of K&D. Monty excitedly reads it, discovering the secrets of the K&D, including war strategies, tactics, and how to make use traps and weapons, along with everything else in the hideout. He believes this is the perfect way to take down Grandfather and finally make a world a better place, but Ben says they have zero chance, and just before Monty can convince him to help, he's once more terrified of his dad and leaves, as Monty says that he'll show them what Zero can do, and becomes the legendary Number Zero. Then with a new team of children, only known as Sector Z, they use the K&D technology and strategies to destroy the factories and free the kids, before Grandfather himself arrives, furious at what his son is doing. And then fires a laser that seemingly doesn't Grandfather for good. I gotta say, that is a fantastic opener. It has really great atmosphere throughout that drives in the tone and fleshes out the lore of the world, making it truly oppressive, and already gets you invested with Ben and Monty, and especially the story of how things turned out. It just grabs you right away and you want to know more. It is said that this caused the 7th and current age of the Kids Next Door. Now, people might have been under the impression that this was the start of the K&D, but no, they clarify it was just a new age after Grandfather's reign, which does make sense as it's implied that K&D would go back to the beginning of civilization and adult tyranny. But we do know that the 7th age potentially ended in the 19th century, in the Battle of the Alamo, in an attempt to steal great-grandmother and her triplets' cake recipe, and cause nearly all the operatives to be trapped and frozen in ice cream, which does seem to show that after Grandfather was born with one of the triplets, they inherited great-grandmother's powers and used it to take over the world into a dictatorship and fundamentally destroy the K&D, until Monty managed to revive it with the book once more with the new age. That's actually a pretty solid timeline. They did a great job incorporating it with the lore. The only thing that bugs me is that it implies the K&D only just allowed girls into the organization, which to me makes no sense because, like, again, if it's thousands of years old, they were just now inclusive to all kids in like the last 30 years. At that point, it's just the boys next door, which wasn't there a big moment in future where the K&D was revived like it used to be?
Join the boys next door.
No! The Kids Next Door.
I really don't like that. It doesn't make any sense. I know Operation Archives isn't canon and this movie completely contradicts that, but I'm gonna imagine that part was actually real. But yeah, enough timeline tangent. Number 1 continues saying that no one knows if this really happened, or if Number 0 really existed, but says he will find the book himself and become one of its many contributors, writing,
Kids Next Door.
and holy crap, a full CG moon base. Yeah, what a surprise, you really didn't see that too often back then for TV. Apparently this was done with help from the studio Curious Pictures, as Warburton wanted to try and sprinkle some CG in the movie, and man, it looks great, can't imagine it would have been easy. Plus we get a rocking remix of the theme along with seeing more of the moon base, it's really cool. Eventually getting a mission call from the K&D Museum, but it just turned out to be nothing. But number 101 is on a tour of the museum for the younger recruits, like we see with Sector W from Season 3, but primarily showing out the recommissioning module, which can recommission a decommissioned operative believed to be built by Number 0 but isn't functional anymore, as well as a DNA tracer of his own invention. Admittedly, the foreshadowing is pretty heavy here. What is this, for kids or something? But it turns out the wax figures of the Sector V villains were actually just there underneath the wax. God, I really hope they weren't covered in earwax. You know, I've always wondered, like, the Sector V villains are probably the only villains we see in this show, and again, on production level, why it would be difficult and unnecessary to design other villains that aren't going to be used, but I still find it weird that the local sector has their own rogues dedicating this museum when this is a worldwide thing. I guess it potentially does boost Sector V's reputation if they have to repeatedly deal with the biggest and most dangerous criminals. Turns out that all the villains here are in a massive multi-front assault on the K&D, not only attacking the museum, but Sticky Bear along with some other villains are in space on an assault on the moon base. You know, it's worth it in a late episode of the season that most of the adult world doesn't know the candy colonized the moon and is only recently doing space travel, but Sticky Bird already has seemingly easy space fairy technology, so it's where the rest of the world doesn't have it as accessible. But I mean, candy has never been a logical show, has it? But this is also fundamentally a stage call of a good chunk of the Rose Gallery, potentially for newcomers who haven't seen this show. And both call Sector B for assistance, while number 1 has to tell his dad he can't spend quality time with him as he's hanging out with his friends. Number 1 prioritizes the museum despite 86's direct order. As we see a full-on CG space battle, hell yeah! Again, it does show the larger movie scale in this, as you've never seen this in the original show. Admittedly, even if the use of CG spacecraft looks very Futurama / Invader Zim. And yeah, basically the next few sequences are massive, awesome battles where each operative goes toe-to-toe with a specific villain. And yeah, while Candy does have pretty imaginative and awesome action set pieces, it is really cool to see it in a movie. Apparently, according to the Warburton blog, the production of this movie was split to be more manageable in the same style as 11-minute episodes, which makes production easier, not to mention help and commitment by a bunch of other people. However, the villains in the museum enact a sudden hasty retreat for seemingly no reason, as Mr. Boss says to the convention center. They're confused but they have to stop the assault at the moon base before it gets destroyed. And that grid looks great and epic. Even Warburton was surprised they even were able to pull off this entire sequence. Number 1 gets a plan to use the salt the base has in its pretzel maker, and instead of planning to trick Sticky Bird that they're going to collide with him to get all the ships in front, before instead pivoting to collide with the base with the salt deposits and then blowing it up at all the ships, salting all the candy pirates as they retreat. Man, that's all it took to take them out? Who knew that they could be defeated with
just a little sodium chloride?
Also, shouldn't Sticky Bird be like dead with his helmet broken like that? Also hope this isn't foreshadowing.
I'm glad I'll never have to fight you.
However, despite their victory, 362 is still ballistic over number 1 defying a direct order by going to the museum instead of the moon base, as he defends it as it contains the artifacts of number 0. But 362 just tells him that it was a diversion for the moon base attack. But effectively, she calls number 1 out that she's in command and number 1 can't go AWOL and decide priorities himself. But still, he defends his own priorities with his admiration of number 0, which 362 doesn't even believe exists. She thinks she's too reckless and impulsive and can't promote them to global tactic commander. Now, this is kind of one of the themes of the movie, which I'll get to by the end, so just keep it in mind. And then gives it to number 86, who honestly I don't think has made like a single good tactical decision in her life, but whatever. Number 101 calls saying that in the attack, however, one thing was stolen from the museum, the recommissioning chamber. However, despite the fact that it was claimed to be broken, Fanny actually did manage to repair it to recommission the rest of Sector V after the events of Season 2, which is actually a good callback and could explain how that happened. Granted, why she never told anyone about it or at least broke it after is confusing, and with the module in the hands of the villains, they can recommission any person previously a part of the K&D with sensitive information to sabotage it. Also, people in my previous videos on K&D seem to be under the impression that every adult was previously in the K&D, hence their hatred after losing their memories. Yeah, that's not true for numerous reasons, since I already discussed how the new ways of K&D just started in the relative time frame of 30 to 40 years, and even characters like Mr. Wink and Fib explicitly were in their own gang unrelated to the K&D. So yeah, that's really not true at all. Luckily, they know where they're heading as they make a beeline to the convention center. How did they know which convention center in all the world? I have no idea. I guess it's just a certified villain con. They should sue Illumination. But like, think about it, these guys just hosted an entire convention to themselves. And I've just noticed this stuff happens a lot. Like, at first it seems like all these villains are just solo and unorganized, just each going out of the way to attack the K&D for their own motives. But multiple times it has been shown that they are some unified collective, like they're not hired by anyone or arranged as some like organization. It just seems to be entirely self-serving, especially with what we see the villains do when they aren't actively attacking the K&D. Like the convention center, they have their own award shows, meeting and movie theaters, they go out for bowling, macaroni dinners, they even have annual barbecue cookouts. So it got me thinking, are these just a bunch of friendless adults who have no other hobbies going through a midlife crisis and just desperately want a community to join, have a purpose in life to fill that void? And then just all unified under the common cause of hating children and making their lives miserable and make all these identities and personas to make this whole thing? But they just actually want an excuse to hang out and feel like they belong somewhere. That suddenly puts everything into perspective. Just really think about it. I think it makes perfect sense. Maybe instead they should just like put all that into something less harmful and more productive. Like start up a big old book club or something. I think that would work out the best. But it turns out Father organized everything to steal the recommissioning module to unleash the ultimate evil in the kids next door. And yeah, despite Grandfather not being nearly as powerful as he used to be, Father explains that Monty used the decommissioning technology on him, erasing his memories and fundamentally depowering him. Though it is weird how like no one else around remembers when they should, and before Sector B could stop them, Chad and Kree revealed themselves to capture them. Man, even the teenagers joined in on this convention, everyone is here. Also, this is another reason why Chad being a double agent makes no sense, because like, how is allowing Grandfather to be revived helpful in the slightest? And with Nigel's operative signature, he's able to revive Grandfather and the biggest threat to the world. Can I also appreciate Grandfather's design? I appreciate Father's simplistic silhouette form and perfectly matches the stereotypical father figure look, but also with the red outline and yellow eyes, give him such an ominous presence that also emphasizes his fire abilities. But I appreciate how Grandfather evolves that even more with more detail on his flowing robe-like outfit that turned to eldritch tentacles, and his giant gnarled hands and devil-like hair, and his beard making him feel old and ancient without actually having any detail, not to mention his big crooked nose you can only see on the side, plus also having an animated mouth lit up in yellow with loose teeth as well. It sets him apart from Father, but also allows him to be much more expressive and also devious in a way. Admittedly, he does kind of look like a wizard, but it fits. Really good job on the design, props to the designers. Kinda makes me wonder what he'd look like if he had the mouthless design though. However, Father didn't realize that he restored Grandfather, who already hated him and thinks nothing of him, berating him that he only brought him back since he wasn't able to destroy the kids next door himself, and that he always liked Monty better. Wow, harsh. And that's to the kid who actively destroyed everything and got him there. It also confirms that he was the younger brother, Ben, from the intro, which is actually fascinating lore. It actually develops Father in a way that reveals that a lot of his villainy is rooted in the fact that he was basically a traumatized child terrified and abused by his own father, and potentially by never getting his approval or affection, it motivated him to become just as big as a villain in his own way, trying to become what he hoped his father would love him for. It's actually really messed up. It actually evokes a lot of what I said in my Sucks to Live video, that it feels like so much of the root of the villains in this show comes from the cycle of bitterness and hatred from abuse to childhood, leading to abusive adults. But yeah, it shames Father to leaving and dropping the module in shame. It also immediately shows Grandfather's immense power, even beyond Father, that he's somehow able to just warp his surroundings seemingly to his whims for whatever reason. Yeah, Grandfather just basically has omnipotence somehow. But yeah, Grandfather announces to the other villains that he's no longer going to be bothered by youngsters, and uses his power to turn every kid into a zombie senior citizen under his complete command to work in slave labor to make an endless supply of tapioca pudding for him to restore his power. What's with this show and old people obsessed with tapioca? And to ensure his complete domination, he will do this to every kid and everyone who was ever a kid. As everyone soon realizes the problem.
Chip, wait a second. I used to be a kid. Me too.
And then uses the Toilinator as his first victim, then makes some verifiable seizure-causing lights. I do love how it also inadvertently shows Grandfather's threat, as he's able to turn the most useless villain here into a lethal machine, as we see anyone who gets in contact with a senior citizen zombie, god that's a mouthful, becomes one too, like a fitting zombie apocalypse. And pretty much everyone in the convention center becomes a victim. However, we don't see Spanky-Lot or Chad getting effective, so they might have gotten away, huh? This free sector VS Kree gets affected, seemingly showing that just contact with Grandfather also spreads the infection, as 5 desperately tries to get number 1 out of there, but Nigel is super depressed that he messed up Royal, and 5 has to put a last stand to stop Kree so they can all get out unscathed before she too gets affected. But now Grandfather turned all the adults into senior citizen zombies. Even the ones who already were seniors. I do appreciate how the zombies have a unique design style to them that sets them apart from normal old people, but it still does make them look like they're comprised entirely of soggy toilet paper. But more importantly, Grandfather says that once he's done transforming the masses, he's going to find the Book of Candy and destroy it so that no one can stand to defeat him. Though weirdly enough, they just don't notice or care about number 1 on stage. Like, really, he's just there when no one notices or attacks him. Like, Grandfather, he's right there, a high-ranking Candy operative. Just right there. Come on. Yeah, not gonna lie, that's pretty dumb in the plot. But then in a montage, we see Grandfather lead his campaign with his army against the KND, using his installable zombies to turn the other Candy agents into zombies themselves. And then once done, turn their bases to tapioca factories where they work at. Each and every one. Apparently from the Warburton blogs, there was gonna be a Las Vegas and Florida base that were cut. But come on, like that's needed, those places were already filled with senior citizens in the first place. And we basically see him take over the world incredibly easy if the montage is to be believed. Sometimes he doesn't even seem to send his army, he just actively warps the world to his whims. Like holy sh*, he just won pretty much without a struggle and turned the world back to his smoggy old-timey sprawl. But this also kind of reminds me of a great comment I saw in my villains video, where they say that Grandfather's representation of the industrial Victorian era, but in particular, the rampant abuse of human rights and child labor that was seen as commonplace through the ages. And yeah, that's especially true not only by the visuals of the flashback in the current transformed landscapes, but how we see he actively enslaves children to make product for him. Potentially even worse that he uses the same excuse many people use to justify it, suggesting it's better that they are forced to manual labor because it keeps them busy. Nearly every villain in this show in one way or another can be seen as a representation of a problem in childhood, bullies, mean neighbors, corporal punishment, wrath from a parental figure. But Grandfather is the only one that actually references real-world atrocities where children were exploited, hurt, maimed, and even killed, all for the profits of men like him. Not to mention representing child abuse in general, with how much he neglects and traumatizes his own kids, especially Ben. Hell, even in the previous seasons we see that with Father.
Daddy, don't make me eat the yucky broccoli. Please, Daddy.
And I feel all of that makes Grandfather stand out as a great thematic villain for this show, with how much he represents true exploitation and abuse of children. Wow. And yeah, this montage already brings in the dark atmosphere of the movie and ramps up the stakes immediately, as Grandfather is pretty much already victorious and took over the world. I'm not kidding, number 362 implies it's only been an hour or two, good freaking lord. So number 2, 3, and 4 in the moon base, as 2 they can rig their birthday suits, a protective suit meant to counter aging abilities, probably after the season 1 finale, to be immune to the senior citizen zombie infection, but they need to get tools back from the Sector V treehouse, which is no doubt going to be infected soon, and 3 and 4 volunteer to do so with some shipping fuel through the fans. Gotta love them.
We don't need time. We need a hero.
All right, big fella, let's crash this party.
Sorry, I just got back from a big DreamWorks video. And meanwhile, number 1 is still at the convention. Okay, how did no other villain notice him? And did none of his other teammates bother to check on him? However, he finds a discarded recommissioning unit, which has number 0's DNA. Also, 101 from before is also there somehow. Okay, again, was he also missed in the immediate takeover of the world? And yeah, pretty much tells him to use his DNA tracker to find number 0 and recommission him, as he's the only one who could possibly stop Grandfather. However, at the same time, 3 and 4 go to Sector V's treehouse, which is still unchanged, but we see the ominous green sky indicating his presence is near. But they also come across Tommy, number 2's little brother, still on the high of being a hero. However, their defenses are already breached, as the toileter already broke in as a zombie, and pretty easily takes him as the others run for their lives. However, in an immense stroke of idiocy, it seems number 2 never actually told them what specifically they should look for. They wish number 5 was there, and speak of the devil.
Shortest, dumbest, most chicken big mouth squirt on the entire team.
I do appreciate the psychological level. Not only are the operatives forced to fight their own friends once they were taken over, but they also very easily use psychological warfare. Luckily, the hamster army comes in and saves them, just as they really pour on the shipping fuel like damn. However, this basically zombifies all the hamsters in the process, turning them into one of those 80s TMNT ripoffs, which does show that it doesn't just affect people but seemingly all life, as they run to a closet to hide. And then the movie's writing just got hijacked by another fan shipper.
To do next?
Kiss me.
Kiss you?
Ain't gonna happen.
Okay.
Well, I say that until... I gotta give them credit. You just ran through the emotional gambit of fear, shock, disgust, and dread I never knew was even possible. Honestly, that's gotta be like one of the worst ways to get zombified, genuinely. So yeah, 3 out of the 5 main characters are gone barely after the halfway point, Jesus. But just under it, number 1 tracked down number 0's location, right at his house where his goofy dad greets him, surprised he's there. You know, I figured he'd be more worried about the active zombie apocalypse going on. Like, I know adults in the candy universe are usually pretty thick, but there should be a World War Z level crisis going on right now. Number 1 thinks the machine is just malfunctioning, just as the toileter arrives to get him too. I actually do like how the toileter still basically has the same personality, even when zombified unlike nearly everyone else.
I'll flush you for that!
And Nigel has to basically just pretend it's a game with his dad so he doesn't have to explain everything going on. It's tag, and whatever you do, don't get touched. And his dad's just happy to play a game with him, aww. But he's not alone, as the hamsters in this treehouse are also after him. Though it is actually a really intense scene, I love it, being chased through the house by the hordes. And though he tries to barricade them in his room, it's no use, as they're only moments away from being the next victims, as he yells at his dad for not getting it. Which they actually do pause and show how much it genuinely hurts him, but he accidentally activates a familiar panel in the tree, which both use as an emergency escape from the horde. And yep, this is the exact same tree that held the Book of K&D in the flashback. But wait, in the flashback the tree was pretty clearly in London, how is it here in America? And this does prove they built the house around the tree, and that they canonically moved to America roughly 8 years ago proves they couldn't have moved it. And how number 1 like never found this panel, this doesn't make any sense, but it's cool as hell. But he can't deny the given evidence and uses the recommissioning module on his dad, revealing he was number 0 the entire time. Holy shit. Yeah, this twist hits so much harder when you've actually watched the show throughout. Nigel's dad was already an established character since season 2's Operation Oompa, and the two have a complicated relationship, where he's usually very loving and well-meaning in his own goofy way, but Nigel most of the time can't relate or gets distracted by his K&D duties. And it's been a running theme that Monty always just wanted to get along better with his son. It was even foreshadowed in the beginning.
It's not that I don't like spending quality time with you. It's just, you know, more cool hanging out with my friends than with my dad.
But yeah, what a twist that his father was the greatest candy member of all time, not to be a myth. They even lampshade that he got his abilities from him. Apparently, this wasn't just planned for the movie, as according to the Warburton blogs, the idea came from the writer Benjamin Wilgus, who had the thought of number one's dad being the greatest candy operative but got decommissioned, and Warburton and the others loved the idea so much, but they knew it couldn't be in an episode, and saved it for the opportunity to implement in a potential movie, which did happen. Similar thing with Grandfather, as they figured the best way to top Father as a villain was to go even further back to his family tree to make Grandfather. But apparently there was a concept for a grandmother, wonder how that would work. It does beg the question on who their mom was anyway. I also love the detail of Monty's eyes no longer be covered once he's recommissioned, representing his view is no longer clouded now that he got his memories back. And yeah, it's pretty epic. He also does confirm that he somehow did manage to try the legendary 4th flavor of ice cream. And Nigel of course fanboys over his dad being the number 0 and all the cool adventures they can do together. But Monty goes straight to business, showing the secret location of the actual famous book of K&D, with Monty saying he can write his own stories in it too, along with his. And after hearing the sitch, he says he's going to get help from his team. But Nigel basically says that most of the K&D at this point are turned. How did he know that? And speaking of which, we cut back to the moon base, which is currently under siege by the zombie army. But at least they get a transmission from 3 and 4. God, Grandfather did him dirty with that hairline. You know, more shows to do this, like Wakanize and confirm the ship you've all wanted, but we're going to do it in the grossest, most disturbing way possible to the point that absolutely no one comes out happy. It's just very funny. So yeah, it's now basically just 2, 86, and 362, with that plan just failing. So 2 just has to wing it with any of us stopping it, as 362 has to put on a last stand to buy as much time as possible. And it's really cool, and remind you, 362 did actually earn her position. But yeah, even they're outmatched and get turned. And even then, number 2 can just barely jury-rig the suits before 86 gets infected, and he as well. And, well, there goes the last battalion for the K&D and all of humanity. Yay! The K&D world is gone, and not even Tubi can save them anymore. Can Alpha Strike help out, or is that only on Christmas? Did Santa get zombified? However, even though he basically just won and got rid of virtually all opposition to his rule, and enslaved nearly all of humanity, he still refuses to rest on his laurels. Because unlike most other villains, Grandfather wants to absolutely ensure his rule, and seeks to find and destroy the Book of K&D, the cause of his previous downfall, so no hope of resistance can be formed. Gotta hand it to this guy, he is really proactive. So now to literally the only people in the world who can stop them. Well, I guess maybe the Galactic K&D could. Monty and Nigel go to get help at Father's house. Whoa. So yeah, with Nigel's dad being revealed to be Monty, it obviously means that he was brothers with Father the whole time, who at this point is still overly depressed after Grandfather verbally berated him, revealing that he doesn't actually look like that, but he's actually wearing a weird rimlet shadow skin-tight outfit the entire time. Wow, he wears a shadow full body silhouette suit too? I thought I was the only one. Well, me and Cell Specs. And we finally get to see Father unmasked. Well, okay, except we did here, and here. Okay, we actually saw it a bunch of times before, so it's not that shocking. Granted, his intimidation factor really goes away once you know he actually looks like a generic high school science teacher. Also, that suit somehow gave him the voice of Maurice LaMarche, as without he's now voiced by Jeff Bennett.
What are you, president of the obvious club or something?
But then how can this design not be voiced by him? And then drops the truth bomb.
I'm your dad's brother, Benedict. Your uncle!
So, does this mean that Benedict this whole time was actively trying to burn his nephew to death multiple times and potentially even eat him once? I don't know how you can make this any darker. Nigel realizes that because of that, Grandfather is his grandfather. Huh, you know, shouldn't this have already been a thing? Like, did he ever meet up with his family? Like, did Monty just never go and visit his brother down the lane throughout all of Nigel's life? Monty once again calls for Benedict's help like he never did in their past and asks help from his kids, the delightful children. They want to kill them, but Father actually wants to help them, mostly to get back at his father for the abuse and neglect. But then for the first time we see the children actually defy an order from Father and try to shoot anyway, before Monty shoots them with a recommissioning module, revealing that the delightful children, this whole time, were the missing kids from Sector Z, the original freedom fighters who helped Monty take down grandfather. Oh my god. This lore is incredible, like god the reveals in this movie. Apparently father admits that he put them through delightfulization, which if you don't know is a process where children are robbed of their free will and turned into the perfect, well-behaved, and well-mannered drones who can only obey adults. His first chamber blew a fuse which exponentially increased the delightfulization, which made the delightfulization permanent and stopped them from aging altogether, making them his perfect kids. Wait, wouldn't they have been grown up by then? Like Ben would have been an adult when this happened and they were the same age? So I don't know, another minor plot hole. But wow, okay, so this guy just abducted these 5 kids and not only brainwashed them near permanently and stopped them from aging, but he also just basically adopted them as his own twisted family. They were never his kids at all. He just freaking kidnapped them. I take it back, this can get even darker. What the hell, show? But yeah, even though they were recommissioned, unfortunately Monty explains that it's only temporary and they will revert back eventually. But they accept their fate and hope to do anything to fight back before they do. And Monty gets a plan to stop Grandfather, as he knows he's going to be after the book and coming here. And there's nothing on Earth that can stop him.
Not on Earth.
As Grandfather and his army approach the mansion, one in Sector Z fly to the moon base, as Monty and Benedict stay to make a last stand against their evil father, with Ben finally accepting Monty's hand. Freaking awesome! As they confront their tyrannical father who laughs in amusement. I do wish he made a comment about seeing them as adults themselves and even having their own kids, but he doesn't. Also, once again singles out Ben for being pathetic. Like, Jesus, dude! He literally says he respects Monty more for actually having an attitude and wishing he was more evil like him, and blasts Ben away just to shut him up. Then...
You beg!
Holy crap, we're finally gonna get it. A huge battle between father and grandfather. Finally, he's gonna stand up for himself and fight the biggest monster who made the way he is. It's gonna be awesome. Oh, you, show. You can't blue ball me like that. You really set up all of this with Ben being abused and turning him to the father we know, and finally joining Monty rebel against his dad, and then being pushed to his absolute limit just to fall back at the last second? Come on. That is so disappointing. Like, at that point, what's the purpose of all this if you're not gonna actually pay it off? Hell, it's like one of the few times in the entire movie that Grandfather actually looks concerned. He doesn't have to win, he just has to actually do something. So, yeah, that really sucked. Grandfather now pretty much just tells Monty to listen for once in his life and give up the book, but Monty refuses to listen as they just full-on clash. But in a weird cut, we see apparently on the moon base that Sector Z is off-screen holding off the zombies, and I'm just gonna assume the special delightfulization makes them immune to their touch, while number 1 can go to the control room and set up the plan. However, he's coincidentally stopped by the zombies of all his former friends. Actually, a really cool concept you want to see in the movie. So he gives us tidbits of lore, like 5 got him into the candy in the first place, he saved 4 from bullies on his first day of school, and he's been best friends with 2 since kindergarten. But he's overpowered, saying that he can't do it himself, and he's always had a team to rely on, which is kind of a theme of the movie I'll get to by the end. Luckily, he's saved by Sector Z, who presumably must have taken out all the other zombies, really wonder how, as he takes command of the moon base to change his position. As we see, they literally changed the orbit of the moon. Holy crap, that's awesome. However, just as they take out Sector V, the recommissioning wears off as they begin delightfulizing again, somehow still magnetizing to each other, which is weird because we have seen they can separate. Also, yeah, can we just acknowledge how messed up this is? Like, these are actual children who were brainwashed and physically forced to lose their identities to fight the organization they literally restarted to become mindless drones in the very thing they fought against. Holy sh**. I didn't want to save it for this video. I would have brought it up in the Why It Sucks to Live In video. Also, it is jarring to see the delightful kids just beat the shit out of someone with their bare hands, like seriously. They never fight physically. They always rely on deception or mechas and stuff. So them just goddamn beating Nigel to death with their bare hands is so weird. We also see at the same time that Monty is actually somewhat resistant to the zombification by Grandfather's power, as it's slow that even he's impressed with his willpower. It makes me think that those who are genetically tied with Grandfather have innate resistance to the power, which is also probably why Nigel, as we see, was still able to touch the zombified K&D members without turning. Either that or a plot hole. So does that mean that Nigel can potentially inherit his shadow magic and get that silhouette form too? Man, how would that look like on a guy with shades? I'm really curious to know. And with us showing the protagonist's second win, he somehow kicks them off to an escape pod as they scream in space. How the hell they got out of this, I have literally no idea. Base being flushed down a toilet, I guess. However, this attack destroys the targeting system, and he has to manually do it with bikes, but can't do it alone. But he doesn't have to be, as he jury rigs the makeshift birthday suits 2 was working on to somewhat turn his own teammates back, but only half of their bodies, but still their minds are back as all of them work together to pull off the plan. Again, it arguably ties to the theme, which I'll get to. But they're not going to fire anything at the target. They're firing themselves. And straight up just dislodges the entire moonbase and fires it at them. This is freaking insane. And this happens as his grandfather realizes Monty has the book on him and effortlessly takes it back as Monty runs for cover. He says nothing can stop him.
A gigantic flaming moonbase?
Holy shit, that shot is amazing! The zoom out, the scale, the slow-mo, the intensity, the size, the way the shot is framed, it's just so goddamn cool! Like, I seriously gotta commend them for that shot. It's so awesome. I like how the movie was able to make something like that. And yeah, the moonbase just goddamn collides with the town, somehow not killing anyone else around them, destroying the local area and father's mansion. And yeah, Monty somehow makes his way from the rubble, but it turns out that grandfather was left completely unscathed. Yeah, completely unscathed from that. I mentioned in my Candy ranking video that I felt Grandfather was the second most powerful villain in CN history next to Black Hat, who is the literal multiversal embodiment of evil. And people kinda called it out, also bring up other characters like Aku and Antipops. But my reasoning is that those guys have at least a physical weakness that can be exploited, like Jack's Celestial Sword or Pops' Pure Power, and have been done in by them in their shows. But Grandfather, as far as we can tell, has no physical weakness at all, with potentially even more reality warping abilities than those, with seemingly little effort, so that boosts him above them in my book, more like a dark god than anything. And even then, Aku and Antipops have been done in plenty of times by their own incompetence and have been put on the back foot multiple times, which can make it hard for them to appear too threatening, when so much of their failures feel to be their own fault. But again, Grandfather really doesn't. He was ultra efficient in his plans and he learned from his mistakes. He makes a zombification infection to infect everyone on the planet and virtually got rid of any free will, then alters reality to be exactly like his whims, and sought to destroy the Book of K&D, which was his original downfall, so that no one can learn of its knowledge and no one can get help to stop him. It was a really well put together plan. Like, his only actual flaw was just never noticing number one in the convention center for some reason and not turning him, but that's literally it. But Monty tells him that the plan was never just to crush him with the base. No. It's to bring the decommissioning chamber to him. I actually love how it was foreshadowed here.
All decommissioning chambers except for Chamber 3 are destroyed!
And yeah, well, as I said, Grandfather has no physical weakness. His weakness is his mind, as he has no mental protection, as apparently the mind-erasing technology made him forget who he really is, and all his power, reverting it back to a harmless old man like he was. Unfortunately, so did Monty. You know, this does beg the question, did Monty just forget how abusive his dad was after decommissioning? And because of it, all of his powers on the planet are reversed, with the world turning back to normal, no longer under his active control, and all the zombified people turning back to their usual selves. As 362 apologizes to one for reprimanding them in the intro. I don't know, I'm not too into it, seems really superfluous. But he does say he was wrong for doing it by himself, and couldn't have done it without his team, and even declines to take 86's promotion so he can still be with them. Yeah, sorry, but I really don't feel that. The movie kind of tries to push this team morality of one need to respect his team who are with him more, and not be so headstrong himself. But I feel it didn't really utilize it well. From the beginning, we see even if one defies orders, he still works with his team very well, and were successful in fighting off both assaults. And for most of the movie, he was separated from his team as they basically got picked off one by one, while he went and found number 0, and they made the plan that ultimately stopped Grandfather. And sure, he struggled fighting them while zombified and needed their help to target the moon base, but like, it doesn't feel like the movie was building up to this. If anything, it feels like he really didn't need his team, which, yeah, makes this whole aspect probably flat. However, one goes to try and recommission his dad to bring number 0 back, but the module falls apart once again. And it leads to one of the best moments in the movie, where a hologram plays where Monty tells them that he intentionally broke the module. He knew he'd want to bring him back and go on a bunch of adventures with him, like he's always dreamed of. But he's not a kid anymore. He's an adult now, and furthermore, a parent.
I need to complete the most important mission of my life, being a good father to my son.
God damn, my feels. Like, this is one of the most emotional moments of the franchise. Bestows upon him the book, and let not just him, but everyone write their stories in it.
No, Dad. I was just playing with an old friend.
Yeah, man, I love this moment so damn much. And a month later, we see the moon base somewhat rebuilt bigger and better. Man, they really fixed these tree houses fast, like in season 1. Hey, wouldn't they notice the huge base under? Who cares? And we see them dedicate a huge statue to the original number 0 as they close the movie in a callback to the first scene with what one was going to write in the book.
We are Kids Next Door.
And so, that ends Operation Zero, K&D's first and only movie. And as I said in the beginning, does it earn the title as Cartoon Network's best TV movie? And the answer is... Of course it is, and that's Secret of the Omnitrix. That movie was so high quality it could have played in theaters, honestly. Sorry I was misleading you all from the beginning, but if you're a fan of this show, you should already know, never trust adults. But is it still a good movie? Now, I've already went through the issues I've been having. As I said, I feel a lot of its themes aren't as strong as it could have been. This movie wants to have a big character arc with number 1 being too reckless and not appreciating his team enough and learns to be better through the movie, but he really doesn't, as it's pointed out because he's so headstrong he made the right decision and the victory seems completely superfluous without his team, to the point where the other Candy members don't really feel like they're needed. It even ends that way with one at the beginning saying he would write "I am Kids Next Door," and the ending everyone writes "We are Kids Next Door," when it never really felt like there was a message there. I hate to do personal rewrites, but imagine if instead of dedicating so much to the treehouse segment, one was saved by Sector V in the convention, but as it went along, all of them got turned trying to save the others before he met Zero, and he was alone and felt hopeless, not knowing what to do without his team. He gave him an extra drive to stop Grandfather. That would have been incredible for the arc. I just feel they're gonna make it a theme, they should have made it more involved in the narrative, and not just feel kind of tacked on. Not to mention a lot of other things in the story that feel they don't get the payoff they needed, such as Father having a complete blue ball moment where he's built to finally take revenge on his abusive father and have a huge fight just for him to leave, so everything just felt pointless on that front. Also, ever realize that number 1 and Grandfather legitimately never interact? It feels weird. There should totally have been a scene with it. Like imagine he goes, "Well, Monty, it seems you have a little breath of your own." Not for long. Not to mention its other plot holes, especially Grandfather just again leaving Nigel there in the convention center. But there's so much to love from this movie. Even if some themes fell flat, plenty of others were done extraordinarily, especially around the main conflict. Grandfather is the perfect antagonist for the series, a heartless, abusive parental figure who feels legitimately unstoppable and ruthless. It stands against everything the show stands for, and how it molded Monty and Ben. It perfectly exemplifies the ending I mentioned at the end of my Sucks to Live In video. Both were abused and traumatized by the adults in their lives who treated them like dirt. But Ben was traumatized so much that he continued the cycle of evil and hatred in a vain attempt to feel like he's worthy of his father's love and respect, turning into a monster himself, and forced his own perfect family by also enslaving and destroying the lives of multiple children. But Monty refused to continue the cycle of hatred. He had the willpower and determination to stop his abusive father and spare any other kid or person from the same fate that fell on him and put an end to that, and refounded the organization on the principles of freedom for all against tyranny, and that every kid should have a happy childhood, unexploited or harmed. And he willingly gave all of himself up, his legacy, his memory, just to ensure that he could be a good parent to his son. Finally be the loving, caring father he wished he had in his own life. It makes that moment hit so much harder and breaks your heart. I love it so much. I say that Kids Next Door, if you can look past the goofiness, the childishness, the silliness, you can find some of the best allegories and themes of childhood, growing up, in adulthood I have seen in any work of media, and I love how it hits so much harder now that I and many others have grown up. As well as the themes of number 1 never really appreciating his father much in his show. A lot of his own childish naivety of the world, until he actually learned firsthand who his father was, and how much of a legacy he had, he gave up just to dedicate his life to him, and it makes the embrace at the end mean so much more.
I want to hang out with my friends. They don't wake me up at 5 in the morning because they read some stupid article in the stupid paper. Why do I have to come to England with you on a business trip?
Well, why not, Nigel, old bean?
No, Dad. I was just playing with an old friend.
I love a lot of stuff about this movie. Its intense and dark atmosphere and its story, and how it feels like so much is being lost, seeing so many characters become monstrous zombies, and the rising stakes of everything feeling hopeless. I love its tone, and it's really investing in how it carries it out, making it a surprisingly dark entry of the show, but it's very much appreciated for the movie. Not to mention, of course, the incredible lore and reveals that feel so satisfying as a fan. Seeing proper lore on the organization and a mythical figure like Zero makes the world feel so much more rich and interesting. Of course, the massive reveal of one's dad being such a legendary figure and related to father, as well as the reveal of the delightful children being former K&D members. It's just so rewarding as a fan. And there's so many cool and intense action scenes, like the villain fights and that one badass shot with the moon base. God, I still love it. I still love this movie, and it's everything a fan would want, and it delivered. And is no doubt the best thing to come from this series. Fantastic job. Is it the best CN movie? No. Is it still a freaking great movie? One Jai Hujik? Yes. Oh well, That's finally good to get done with. I love this series, and Mando's Galactic Candy can come to life like we've all wanted. Never give up hope. I just hope I didn't piss off the Candy themselves for misleading them in the intro. Oh, come on.
I'm no number 0. I'm just a 0.
An absolute zero. I'm nobody.